This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Welcome to another episode of Kal's Corner here on the X-Zone Radio Broadcast Network. My name is Kal Korff, and I'm your host. The executive producer of the show is the legendary one and only Rob McConnell. Welcome, folks. We're back for another broadcast episode here. And as I've explained many times, Kal's Corner covers everything from politics to the paranormal. Now, that's a wide variety of subjects. Now, this does not mean that we cover everything in between every show, but the scope of the show is from politics to the paranormal. So for tonight's episode, tonight's broadcast, we're going to talk about several things. We're going to talk about Deepak Chopra, yes, the Deepak Chopra. We're going to talk about former First Lady Hillary Clinton and her new book. We're going to talk about the recent hurricane disasters that have struck the east coast of the United States. And we're also going to talk about Mr. Al Gore. And then we're also going to talk briefly about Apple's new launching of the iPhone 10 or iPhone X. So we've got a full show, so let's get into it. Now, over the last couple of weeks, I have mentioned that there were two books that I was writing and releasing to the public. The first one, which came out weeks ago, we launched it in Abu Dhabi. That is the country of the United Arab Emirates. It was not launched from India, where I'm broadcasting now from. It was not launched in the United States either, or from the United States, but it is available worldwide in 51 different countries. It is the secret FBI cattle mutilation files. In there are all the publicly released FBI files on the subject of cattle mutilations, as well as a very important report done by Kenneth Rommel, who was a career FBI investigator. He did the seminal study examining hundreds of cases, talking to countless experts, and he even did laboratory forensics on some of the corpses of the animals. And he solved the whole mystery and proved that there is nothing mysterious about these mutilations at all, which UFO conspiracy nuts and other researchers who hype this subject should pay very careful attention to, because essentially they're busted for not telling the truth. And this includes a lot of the mainstream media who is careless in their reporting of these events. So all of that is in the book. It's available from iBooks, from Apple, and the iTunes store as well. Again, in 51 countries, the price is only $9.99. United States currency or any local currency that you may have. Again, it's available in 51 countries. Now, the second book that has been launched a few days ago, it was launched last week, is an expose of famed, let's call him New Age personality, Deepak Chopra. In fact, the book is called The Wisdom of Deepak Chopra's Random Buzzwords. Now, let me explain the purpose of the book and why I bothered writing it. I live in India, which is arguably the world's most superstitious country. It is the most superstitious democracy in the world. It is the world's largest democracy as well. People here in India, many of them, literally worship cows, the animal known as a cow who gives milk, and beef if you eat it, as a god. That's what they do. In fact, the penalties for killing a cow illegally in India can get you, in some places in the country, a sentence as long as life in prison. In other words, you could rob a bank, you could commit a terrible crime such as sexually assaulting a female, and you will do less prison time in India than if you illegally kill a cow. That's how they structure their society. So when I first came to India, I was asking about famed so-called godmen or gurus like Deepak Chopra, and much to my surprise, Indians were laughing at me saying, no, 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 no one in India takes Deepak Chopra seriously. That's an American thing. You being American, you should know better. Well, I told him I don't take him seriously. I never have. In fact, I vividly remember his first appearance that made him famous on the Oprah Winfrey Show, where he used a simple magician's trick with a piece of string and a little metal washer hanging at the end of that string to pull a con to fool Oprah Winfrey with the old classic pendulum trick, which misleads you to believe that you can control the direction of a pendulum with your mind, when what's really going on is your hand or your is shaking and your arm is moving in response to what your mind is thinking. There's no magic there at all. There's no mind over matter control, so to speak, not in the way he implied. But that made him famous, and he's been laughing all the way to the bank ever since. So the purpose of the book was I did a study where I cite other studies that have busted him for essentially being a phony. And I cite those studies. You can Google them. You don't have to take my word for it. Others have already done that work. But in my book, I cite many different subjects from Deepak Chopra, essentially A through Z, so to speak, where a computer algorithm took his vocabulary, took his words from his Twitter feed, randomly put them together. And when you show them to people who believe in him, they can't tell the difference between random gibberish and the real Deepak Chopra. So we'll be back after the break and continue to talk about this.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
I am Dr. Carl O'Helvey, founder, president of a new cancer foundation focusing on evidence-based physical, mental, and spiritual interventions, including natural cancer cures, prayer, meditation, affirmations, nutrition, and other related holistic cancer prevention and cure modalities. These are used in cancer education, research, and financing care. I ask for your help to continue this important work by donating at www.holisticcancerfoundation.com.
Is it science or is it magic? Once a magical thing has been scientifically proven, is it no longer magic? Or is magic simply the science of tomorrow? Join me, Gwilda Wiyaka, on The Science of Magic, a syndicated radio program dedicated to combining the science and magic of today's dynamic and controversial topics to co-create new solutions. By triangulating information from today's leading experts from the scientific and magical fields, we uncover expansive and evolutionary truths you won't find anywhere else. Join us daily on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, xzbn.net, as I interview the share thoughts with the amazing guests from both science and magic. The resulting knowledge is unprecedented. As a gift to you, the listener, past episodes can be accessed on our website free of charge at thescienceofmagic.net.
Little children aren't the only ones afraid of the dark. Millions of soldiers return from war zones with PTSD, anger, frustration, fear, and loneliness, much of which surfaces during the darkness of the night. You have the chance to change the lives of these American heroes. Songs and Stories for Soldiers.us provides free MP3 players for these men and women. With a list of 3 million songs in 16 different styles, 100,000 audiobooks, and 30,000 old-time radio programs, every veteran can find something to soothe and comfort them at no cost. All our players contain an 8-hour audio program designed to help veterans fall asleep. With 1,500 plus vets now participating, it's our goal to deliver 10,000 audio players this year. Go to our website at songsandstoriesforsoldiers.us. Help us help a veteran make it through the night.
Welcome to segment 2 of Kal's Corner here on the X-Zone Broadcast Network. I am Kal Korff, your host of the show, Kal's Corner, and of course our executive producer is the one and only Rob McConnell. So in the opening segment, we talked about the 2 new books that I have out on the market. One, again, is on the secret FBI cat of mutilation files. The second one, as we were talking about before the commercial break, was about Deepak Chopra and how this book exposes him. So the short version of the book is this, and this is why I wrote it. There is a piece of software out there that will randomly take the words of Deepak Chopra from his Twitter feed. So they're really words that he really does use. And what this algorithm does, which is really cool, is it randomly strings together his vernacular. And it comes up with what people think is really deep wisdom when it's really randomly generated gibberish. And what's neat is that most of the people who have looked at what this algorithm produces are unable to distinguish between what Deepak Chopra really says versus what a computer algorithm randomly strings together based on words he uses in his Twitter feed. That is a very strong case that there's nothing to Deepak Chopra. As they would say in Texas, if he lived there, he tends to be all hat and no cattle. So that was the point of the book, to show people that you need to think critically and certainly much deeper than what Deepak Chopra is trying to sell you. In fact, it's volume 1 of what I call the Hocus Pocus Dominocus series. I will be doing a follow-up to it, volume 2, where I expose another famed guru from India known as Osho. But we'll get back to that much later when that project is completed. So that's what's been keeping me busy the last month or so, roughly. We launched the books essentially in Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates, the first book. And then the second book was launched from India. I'm back in India now in the northern state of Punjab, where we're broadcasting this episode from. So let's now switch subjects. Let's talk about the devastating hurricanes that have hit the eastern coast of the United States. Now, predictably, sadly, inexcusably, every time a major disaster happens, almost without fail, you have global warming or climate change, that's what they like to call themselves now, climate change nuts and promoters and advocates saying, see, this is proof of global warming. And because these recent 2 categories or hurricanes that hit the United States have been very powerful, they're saying, see, we told you. We told you that global warming is causing hurricanes and that the hurricanes are going to be much stronger and things are going to get much worse. Well, anybody with an IQ of over 10, in my opinion, as well as anybody who's grounded in science, now I'm talking about basic science here, you don't have to be an expert, will tell you that one instance is not enough to prove a case. Neither is two. And the fact remains that when Al Gore made his famous predictions over 10 years ago, he said outside the United States that hurricanes were caused by global warming. That's news to science because that's never been true. But he was calculating enough not to dare say that in front of the American media. What he did say is that the hurricanes would be much stronger and that they would occur with more frequency. Yet the United States went roughly 10 years without a major hurricane. Think about it. We went almost 150 months without a seriously strong hurricane. And a lot of people don't understand that hurricanes happen all the time at sea. It is rare when they hit land because roughly 3/4 of the planet is water, not land. It's basic physics. So finally, Al Gore's movie comes out, his sequel to An Inconvenient Truth, which had won him the Nobel Peace Prize. He was one of the recipients. And his book, An Inconvenient Truth. A sequel came out that Gore had followed up on. He calls it An Inconvenient Sequel, Truth to Power. Both a book and a movie have come out. His movie, according to box office receipts, has been a flop. In other words, people aren't buying it this time. And sure enough, people who believe in climate change, especially believe in Al Gore, and people who believe in what used to be called global warming, are saying, look at the strength of these hurricanes. This is absolute proof that global warming is real, and that's why these hurricanes exist. Well, I have engaged several of these people online and in private communications. Again, their shtick is predictable. Well, here's some reality for you folks. As I have told them, and I'm not an expert on climate change, not at all. I don't profess to be. But if I can figure this out as a non-professional in this field and as an investigative journalist and analyst, then people a lot smarter than me should know better. Well, if you look at the statistics, here's reality. As bad and strong as Hurricane Irma has been, it's a top 25 U.S. storm. Let me show you the statistics here. I'll cite them off. In 1856, there was a hurricane that was more powerful. It was called Last Island. In 1886, there was another hurricane called Indianola. In 1893, there was another hurricane called Chenier. In 1898, still another hurricane occurred that was just as powerful or very close. It wasn't given a name. Still another one occurred in 1900. It was called Galveston. In 1915, another one was named Galveston. In 1916 and 1919, there were two more hurricanes, and there was no name given to those. In 1926, there was a hurricane called Great Miami. In 1928, there was one called Oji-Kobe. What a name. Anyway, it was as strong as Irma. In 1932, there was Hurricane Freeport. In 1935, there was a hurricane called Labor Day. Now, why somebody would name a hurricane after a holiday is beyond me, but they did. In 1945, 1947, 1948, there were three more hurricanes. They didn't have names. In 1950, another hurricane hit called King. 1954, another one called Hazel. 1959, another one called Gracie. Another one in 1960 called Donna. Another one in 1961 called Carla. Another one in 1969 called Camille. Another one in 1989 called Hugo. Another one in 1992 called Andrew. Another one in 2004 called Charlie. Still another one in 2016. Notice the gap of years here, folks, between hurricanes, called Harvey. That, of course, was last year. And then, of course, in 2016, Irma. So what we have here is a case where the hurricanes are pretty much in the ballpark of what these were. And in addition to the fact that there's been a gap of nearly 10 years roughly between major hurricanes. Yet we are told by global warming promoters that the oceans have warmed a lot, and that at first they said there was a pause in global warming. Where did that heat go? Because it turns out that the International Panel on Climate Change had said that there's been no serious warming for about 12 years. And this is where the issue of global warming becomes very problematical, because the people who support global warming say the science is certain. Yes, it is certain. It is true that greenhouse gases trap heat. Nobody's disputing that, not even the fossil fuel industry. Where it becomes dicey, however, is when people say that when the number of parts per million of carbon go up in the atmosphere, this will cause a certain temperature rise to occur around the planet. Well, it's never been that simple. The first thing that people forget is that the Earth is a lot more resilient than human ego gives it credit for. If the Earth were not very resilient, it wouldn't be here after some 4.6 billion years. We have to remember that this planet, as beautiful as it is, has been hit many times by disasters. This includes volcanoes. This includes asteroid strikes. Scientists believe that a fairly large asteroid hit the Earth and wiped out the dinosaurs. That's a major event. If that were to happen today, millions and millions of people would die, and the climate would be altered forever. In fact, it cooled down. So, the Earth is tougher than human ego likes to mislead people into believing. That aside, let's look at the principle of polluting the environment. It is wrong. It is wrong to pollute. Fossil fuels are a one-way ticket to disaster. They're a convenient, short-term energy source, but long-term, it's a disaster waiting to happen. So when people say that I don't believe in global warming, that's not true. I know the science is settled that greenhouse gases trap heat. But what I do is I take each individual claim about global warming on an individual case-by-case basis, and then I assess it accordingly. It's no different than how I evaluate any other claim in any other subject. I'll use UFOs as an example. Not all UFOs are flying saucers. In fact, there's yet to be a definitive case where somebody can say, yep, there's no question that what that person saw was a spaceship from outside the Earth. That has yet to happen. It's never happened as far as we know, as far as we can prove. But to say that all UFOs are this or that, you can't do that. In fact, that's dishonest. What you have to do instead is take each case on its own merits or lack of, and that is true with claims of climate change. Now, it is a fact that many of the major computer models that have been used to simulate the environment over the years have erred towards the alarmist side. I've been saying that for years. I'm not a math genius or expert by any means, but even I could see that there was this alarmist tendency. And we also know that the major funding for climate change research is on the pro side. If you say, hi, I'm scientist so-and-so, give me money, I want to prove that greenhouse gases are okay, that they don't raise temperatures, no one's going to fund that study unless it comes probably from the fossil fuel industry. So at the end of the day, you have people like Al Gore, who has done a fantastic job raising public awareness of this issue. Let's be clear. The problem I have with Gore is when he doesn't tell the truth. Because I believe in the adage, in the maxim, that a valid case cannot be made with invalid data. In other words, a credible case can never be built on lies or deception. And Al Gore, being a very public figure, does lie on occasion. I have reported on this for years. I've had articles published in major newspapers about it. There is no question he has done it. And what bothers me this time around, as he comes back for another encore, is in his new movie and book, he is stooping to new lows, even by his standard, by saying things that are not true. So when we come back in a moment after the break, we'll go into some of this. But before we do that, I want you to understand something. That, again, I believe we need to protect the environment and be responsible about it and move towards clean energy solutions. This does not mean we have the right to lie about things, however. In fact, lying is never right. So we'll be back after this break. My name is Kal Korff. I'm your host of Kal's Corner.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
How would you like to be able to read other people's minds? Well, the next best thing is here. When you know how to read a person's name, you know how the person thinks, feels, and behaves. Each letter in our name holds a key to unlock our true essence. Our name contains both our gifts and challenges in this lifetime. Mnemology science discovers personality secrets hidden in the placement of the letters of our names, including the first and last impression people remember about us. Sharon shows us how to interpret the arrangement of letters as outlined in her book, Know the Name, Know the Person. Sharon Lynn Wyeth created mnemology science after 18 years of research and testing her theories, and has supported thousands of people around the world in understanding themselves and others better. You'll enjoy Sharon's unique teachings as she shares her system to learn the gifts behind your given birth name. Even if you don't like your birth name, there are jewels in this book. If you're thinking of changing your name, ready to name your child, or wanting to get along better with others, this is the book for you. If you'd like to improve your relationships and change your life for the better, get the book today, Know the Name, Know the Person, or visit www.knowthename.com. That's www.knowthename.com.
Hello, I'm Justina Marsh, and with my dad Pete, we are going to present a new show called Too Good to Be True. Together, we are aiming to discover more truths about this world and beyond. Do you have unanswered questions about the world? Do you ever wonder about aliens, conspiracy theories, or the universe? There are many shows discussing subjects such as pyramids or UFOs, but we want to relay this information based on our own research, including from spiritual means. Hopefully, listeners will be helped with their own beliefs and will appreciate the psychic insights that add to the previous research and information. We both look forward to sharing this insight and beginning this journey with our listeners. Visit xzbn.net for more information about when to listen.
Ancient prophecies, legends, and current events indicate we're entering a high-frequency era supporting enlightenment. During expansive times, old rules fail, necessitating access to the ever-shifting currents of life for guidance. There's an ancient form of shamanism through which we can obtain the information we need. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Art School, with a great new provision for those interested in spiritual evolution and personal empowerment. Galactic Shamanism, Art of the Ancients, Key to Tomorrow, is an upcoming series of leading-edge online affordable classes designed to guide and support you and your family during these times of transition. Embrace the magic. Empower your life. Study Galactic Shamanism at findyourpathhome.com.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Okay, welcome back to segment 3 of Cal's Corner radio show here on the X Zone Broadcast Network. My name is Kal Korff, and I'm your host, and the executive producer once again of this show is the legendary Rob McConnell. Now, we were just talking about Al Gore and his new movie and book called An Inconvenient Sequel, Truth to Power. And I've mentioned and made the claim, and I've reported on it for years. I've had articles published in major newspapers proving this, that Al Gore does not always tell the truth about climate change, which is inexcusable. It's not only inexcusable, it is outright hypocritical, because people who believe in climate change and support Al Gore, they complain about the lies of the fossil fuel industry. And yes, the fossil fuel industry does lie. Just like the cigarette and tobacco companies used to lie and say, oh, there's no evidence that cigarettes cause cancer. That was never true. But it is hypocrisy when you accuse one side of lying, even though they do lie, and then you yourself do the same thing. You can't have it both ways. So let's prove that some of what Al Gore has said was not only a falsehood and not true, it could never have been true. Now, Nobel Prize winner and former Vice President of the United States, Al Gore, he's at it again. You guessed it, he's pushing the subject of climate change. Only this time around, Gore has stooped to new lows. The inconvenient truth is that Gore is outright lying at times in his newly released movie and book, An Inconvenient Sequel, Truth to Power, which is Gore's follow-up to his previously successful movie, An Inconvenient Truth. Now, although An Inconvenient Truth won Gore and the United Nations International Panel on Climate Change, the Nobel, it contained lies and falsehoods as well. So the fact that Gore is back doing it again is nothing new. He did it in his original movie that ironically won him the Nobel Prize. So let's briefly expose two of his most famous false claims made years ago, which were part of his first documentary that earned him the Nobel. We're going to start with the photo that supposedly depicts Arctic polar bears being stranded on floating chunks of ice, which was one of its melodramatic and infamous poster child propaganda home runs that Al Gore's original movie, An Inconvenient Truth, had scored. Now, in showing this picture, Gore's words describing it were this, quote, "There, the polar bear's habitat is melting. Beautiful animals, literally being forced off the planet. They're in trouble. Got nowhere to go." That's a quote. Well, that's absolute nonsense. Firstly, this photo that was hyped by Gore as depicting, quote, stranded polar bears, unquote, was taken some 2.5 years before it was released worldwide. Secondly, its photographer, Amanda Bird, is on record saying that she took her famous picture in August. Now, not surprisingly, August is when ice melts in the region where the photo was taken, and the melts are at their peak. Specifically, she said, quote, "They, the polar bears, did not appear to be in danger. I did not see the bears get on the ice. I did not see them get off." Now, I'm going to repeat what she said, and this is a quote. "They, the polar bears, did not appear to be in danger. I did not see the bears get on the ice. I did not see them get off." In other words, Amanda Bird was there. Al Gore was not. Yet he has the nerve and the temerity to say that the bears are in trouble, they got nowhere to go, they're being forced off the planet. It's a bunch of hooey. In fact, the population of polar bears, since Gore made that false claim, the polar bear population keeps rising. It's much bigger now. So Bird elaborated on her image by saying, quote, "If I had released the image myself, it would have been as a striking image, nothing more." Put another way, no evidence or facts ever existed supporting what Gore said. Instead, his words were just made up. Now, this isn't science, folks. It's a lie and a fraud. Now, another Gore falsehood was his claim that, quote, "within a decade, there will be no more snows on Kilimanjaro," unquote, due to global warming, of course. Gore made this alarming statement in 2006. It's now 2017, and Kilimanjaro still has snow and ice. Now, ironically for Gore, a definitive study was conducted in 2006 by Nicholas Cullen of the Tropical Glaciology Group at the University of Innsbruck in Austria. And his study proved that, quote, "rather than changes in the 20th century climate being responsible for their demise, glaciers on Kilimanjaro appear to be remnants of a past climate that was once able to sustain them," unquote. Now, a comment came from one of the scientists who did that study, and he says, "Unfortunately, we made the prediction. I wish we didn't." Now, this is an admission by Douglas R. Hardy, who is a University of Massachusetts geoscientist who was one of the co-authors with Dr. Lonnie Thompson of Ohio State University of the original paper that predicted without substantive evidence that Gore later blindly repeated. Dr. Thompson is not only a friend of Al Gore's, he was one of the scientific consultants for Gore's movie. He stands virtually alone in his belief that the ice melting in Kilimanjaro is due to, quote, "global warming," unquote, while commendably Hardy, his colleague, at least has the integrity and honesty to admit that not only were they wrong, but that whatever ice remaining in Kilimanjaro will likely stick around if present trends continue for several more decades, ironically outliving Al Gore, who is currently 69 years of age. So now we fast forward to the present. Some of the claims Gore makes in his new alarmist movie are at times outright loopy. Let's expose a few examples. And again, the two examples I just gave you were from his first movie, An Inconvenient Truth, which won him the Nobel Peace Prize. Now imagine stating things that are not true, and then you get a Nobel for it. Tough gig if you can get it. So Gore falsely says that crop yields in China have fallen by 5% over the years. Then he predictably blames global warming. Now, this claim is not supported by any credible facts. It is news to the Chinese as well as entities who accurately monitor crop outputs. In fact, according to the International Grains Council, the IGC, their latest report as of August 2017, which I bothered to hunt down and get a copy of, Al Gore did not, it specifically notes that, quote, "China's wheat inventories are set to post another strong gain," unquote. Now, I live in neighboring India, and I can tell you that the economies of China and India, because news about China is always in the Indian mainstream press, unlike in the United States, everybody knows here that China's crop yields have pretty much gone one way up, huge gains over many, many different years, especially the last decade. So what Al Gore is saying is he's wrong. More importantly, the reason the IGC used the word "another" is because for years China has enjoyed, as I've just said, commendable steady increases, as a simple check on the internet will prove, as well as with any number of countless agencies that track this stuff. So for Al Gore to claim otherwise is outright wrong. It's loopy, as I say. Now, Gore says that sea levels are rising. Once again, he's blaming this on global warming. What Gore does not tell you, and this is a favorite trick of his, which is not to tell you the complete set of facts, is that the sea level has been rising for about 150 years now. In fact, it rises on average, depending on where you are on the planet, of about 1 inch a year. As further evidence that climate change is causing this in the eyes of Gore, he disingenuously cites the fact that in Miami Beach, Florida, flooding levels and the frequency of their occurrences have increased. Now, this citation of Miami Beach by Gore is arguably brazen deception. In reality, one of the chief causes of flooding in Miami Beach today is because this city is built on a reclaimed swamplands, which are now sinking because of the amount of buildings that have been constructed on them, fueled in no small part by a huge migration explosion that ranks among the largest in the U.S. In fact, during the years 2013 to 2014, the population growth proportionately in the region of Miami Beach was actually greater than it was in Los Angeles, San Francisco, and even New York. Now think about that for a moment. That's a lot of people. So Miami Beach also suffers from a natural phenomenon known as king tides. King tides are caused by nature, not global warming. Even Gore would admit this if you asked him. Now, king tides occur when the sun and the moon align together on the same side of the earth, the result of which causes a gravitational shift that produces abnormally high tides, which cause flooding. Now, this happens twice a year in Miami Beach. The fall is their worst season. Now, knowing these factors, since trying to reconstitute and build on swamplands began over 100 years ago in Miami Beach, and the city's now paying the price for that, the city started in 2015 a long overdue initiative to spend some $500 million over the next 5 years to try to compensate for this phenomenon by elevating roads and sidewalks by as much as 2 feet and installing some 60 underground water pumps. Now, one of Al Gore's dirtiest and inexcusable, let's call it a snake oil type tactic, is his deliberate use of imagery and disasters to push his message and play on people's emotions, then falsely blaming global warming for causing them. Now, the country of Syria is a perfect example. In his new movie and book, Gore blames global warming for the destruction of crops in that war-torn country. Unfortunately for Gore, reality was never this simple. Indeed, when anyone uses the term climate change today, folks, a responsible person must ask them, which hopefully means you must ask them, a simple question to ensure proper context. The question is, do you mean man-made climate change or natural Mother Nature-induced climate change? Now, their answer to this rarely asked question is where things suddenly get dicey. Here's the short version of what has really happened in Syria. It's an inconvenient truth that Gore and the Democrats especially will never admit, and it'll be clear why the Democrats are part of this problem. In the early 2000s, Syria and other parts of the Middle East began to experience drought. Syria was hit especially hard, suffering its worst dry spell in 900 years, according to a joint study conducted by NASA and the University of Arizona, based on analyzing tree ring samples. Now, dry spells and excessive rains occur all the time. Human existence is not required. To credibly claim that humans caused it requires more evidence. It does not exist, and Gore cannot prove it. So, on November 28, 2008, the United Nations Food and Agricultural Representative for Syria, Abdullah Ben Yahia, asked the outgoing George Bush administration for financial aid to help alleviate Syria's problems. Yahia's
the Earth
grand
is under
plan
ever-increasing pressure from untenable lifestyles and growing populations. Yet, viable answers seem in short supply. What if I told you there's an ancient form that can empower you to take charge of your life? What if your entire family could be enfolded and supported by life itself, finding safe passage through challenging times? I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Art School, with great news: an upcoming series of leading-edge online affordable classes based in an ancient form of shamanism, easily learned and used by your entire family. Galactic Shamanism, Art of the Ancients, Key to Tomorrow are a series of online adult and children's lessons instructing your entire family on natural law, how to cooperate with and be supported by the powers of the universe. Visit findyourpathhome.com to find these unique and powerful classes.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
Are you curious? Do you want to learn more about how the world works and have fun at the same time? Study coincidences with me, Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD, on my Connecting with Coincidence radio show, here on the XZBN network. Listen to Jungians theorize, statisticians randomize, true believers evangelize, while I categorize. I dance to the rhythm of coincidences. People who experience me see more of them. Maybe something on the show matches a thought in your mind. Let us know. Expand your mind to the weirdness happening around you. Synchronicity spoken here, there, and everywhere. For more information, put Connecting with Coincidence in your search engine and find my website, my social media sites, and my blog.
What is truth? Historically, we viewed things as either being true or false. Now, as we enter a more expansive era, we find the question is not, is it true, but rather, how true is it? I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, host of the Science of Magic Radio, a syndicated, internationally broadcast radio program dedicated to uncovering this ever-expanding truth. Join me daily on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, xzbn.net, as I interview today's leading experts from the fields of science and magic to uncover the hidden truth between the lines drawn in the sand. What we unearth in our discussions is not only amazing, but totally unprecedented. You won't want to miss a single episode. In service to our listeners, past episodes can always be found on our website with our compliments at thescienceofmagic.net.
Welcome to the fourth and final segment of Kal's Corner here on the X-Zone Broadcast Network. My name is Kal Korff, and I'm your host. So, as I was saying before the station break, by November 28th, 2008, obviously that was several years ago, the United Nations Food and Agricultural Representative for Syria, Mr. Abdullah bin Yahya, asked the outgoing Bush administration, because Obama had won the election, he was going to be Bush's replacement in the White House. He asked for financial aid to help alleviate Syria's problems. Yahya's grand plan had called for the U.S. to coordinate relief efforts through the United Nations Office of Coordination in Humanitarian Affairs for the 2008 drought appeal. Now, according to a formerly classified document on this issue that we now know exists only because it was leaked, it notes that, quote, Yahya proposes to use the money from the appeal to provide seed and technical assistance to 15,000 smallholding farmers in northeast Syria in an effort to preserve the social and economic fabric of this rural agricultural community. If UNFAO efforts fail, Yahya predicts mass migration from the Northeast, which could act as a multiplier on social and economic pressures already at play and undermine stability in Syria. In other words, the world knew, the United Nations knew, that the Middle East was going through a drought. The water tables were overused. These countries that are in the Middle East didn't do anything responsible to solve the problem when they had a chance to stay ahead of the curve. Syria had asked the Bush administration for help. The Bush administration wouldn't help. They were on their way out, and the issue and the responsibility to actually do something because of how late in the year it was in 2008 really fell on the next administration, which was that of Barack Obama's. So Yahya's dire warning and proposal was widely circulated. Among its recipients, now these are entities who knew what was going on, were the CIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency, the President's National Security Council, which means Barack Obama knew, the government of Iraq, the U.S. Secretary of State, that would have been Hillary Clinton who was coming in, the League of Arab States, the government of Turkey, and the United Nations offices in both Geneva and New York. So starting in January 2009, the USA, of course, had a new president, Barack Obama, who loved so-called green initiatives, and he was determined, quote unquote, to fight global warming. Obama, as everybody knows, spent billions of dollars of taxpayer money trying to do exactly this. Yet where it concerns Syria, Obama immorally refused to help. Instead, he and his former Secretary of State, that would be Hillary Clinton, decided to secretly partner with the Saudis, Turkey, and other countries to engage in what he said he was always against, which was forced regime change. In other words, Obama was hell-bent on ousting Syria's brutal dictator, Bashar al-Assad. Now, the Democrats in 2008 had a supermajority back then. They controlled the Senate, they controlled the Congress, they controlled the White House. They have no excuse. Even with Republican opposition, they could have helped Syria. Only tens of millions of dollars was required. In fact, Syria asked for $30 million. Now, this was much cheaper than training and arming militants to kill Assad, which cost American taxpayers more than $1 billion. It failed, it displaced millions of more people, and got hundreds of thousands killed. Now, to be blunt, the subject of human-induced global warming is a vitally important one. Destroying the environment is not only wrong, it's a crime and a form of genocide against every living thing on this planet. Now, in my numerous debates with climate change advocates over the years, there's a clear pattern in the thinking of most of these people that I have at least interacted with. Their mentality, in part, can be summed up by the classic adage, the ends justifies the means. No, it does not. As I have told countless people, only because it's true, a valid case for anything, regardless of the subject, cannot be made with invalid data. No case built on lies, regardless of the subject, can ever be credible. Sadly, this truism doesn't seem to bother most of them. And that should make everyone think about this. This makes those who feel this way pure hypocrites, because while they complain that the fossil fuel industry makes up its own data and lies to the public, and yes, it does do this, when the pro-global warming side also does the same thing, their professed moral high ground is lost. So the issue of climate change has become so polarized today that if you dare to point out falsehoods said about it, made by its advocates, you can end up being falsely branded as a denier. Now, calling people deniers is deliberately meant to demonize them. It is tantamount to calling somebody an enemy of the state. Now, here's the inconvenient truth as we wrap up this subject for this show about how today's climate change movement originated. These are facts most of its proponents are unaware of, and Al Gore certainly doesn't mention this data. For it was in Great Britain that this whole global warming movement started, and it was launched by former British Prime Minister Margaret Iron Lady Thatcher. Now, Thatcher was Britain's first female prime minister. Many world leaders initially were not taken to this woman seriously. They weren't considering her to be a serious force in the world of politics, even though she was the prime minister of Great Britain. So in response, her top advisors came up with a very clever ploy to counter this perception, and it worked. Thatcher at that time was the only world leader with a degree in science. She was told by her senior advisors, Sir Crispin Tickell and John Houghton, who were pro-environmentalists who were well connected to such circles, that if she championed the issue of global warming, no one would be able to question what she said because they didn't have a degree in science. Thatcher went on to do exactly this via her now historic speech before the UN that she gave on November 8th, 1989, and the world has never been the same since. Now, to be very honest and blunt with you, Thatcher's real motives were far more calculating. Her real focus was not in protecting the environment, it was instead castrating the coal industry and its powerful labor unions who went on strike and crippled the energy supply in Great Britain. So by championing the use of nuclear power over coal, Thatcher was carving out a new way to keep electricity running. She was determined that Britain never be held hostage again by big coal, or as she put it at the time, socialist-leaning unions. Now, the British military also backed Thatcher's pro-nuclear push. It had wanted to upgrade its Trident nuclear missiles, but budget cuts prevented it from doing so. Suddenly, with millions of dollars newly available to it under the guise of nuclear research, Britain was able to upgrade its arsenal so that once again it was a credible deterrent to Russian counterparts. Now, ironically, Thatcher went from being a believer initially in climate change to ending up being a hardcore skeptic. Here are her words, taken from her book, Statecraft: Strategies for a Changing World, which was published in 2002. You won't hear Al Gore talk about them. But on pages 449 and 450, Thatcher writes, quote, "The doomsters' favorite subject today is climate change. It would, though, be difficult to beat the apocalyptic hyperbole former Vice President Gore, Vice President Gore. Thatcher says, Mr. Gore believes the cleavage in the modern world between mind and body, man and nature, has created a new kind of addiction. I believe that our civilization is, in effect, addicted to the consumption of the earth itself." So, Margaret Thatcher is telling the world in her own writings that Al Gore is basically an alarmist. In fact, the professor that taught a young Al Gore at Harvard about climate change later went on and went to his grave saying he was skeptical. He didn't buy it. And that a long time would have to pass before he would say that we could safely say that human activity was causing it. So there's a short version of what has been going on. As Thatcher notes, the fact that seasoned politicians can say such ridiculous things and get away with it illustrates the degree to which the new dogma about climate change has swept through the left of center governing classes. And she's right on this. So my issue with Al Gore is that he should stick only to facts. When he doesn't, he hurts the integrity and the importance of the very cause he claims he's fighting for. Now, let's get off of Al Gore for this time. Again, I remind you that there is no evidence that these two recent powerful hurricanes are being caused by global warming. In fact, there has been a drought of nearly 10 years of hurricanes, and the fact that this latest hurricane, as powerful as it started, essentially petered out very shortly to a Category 2 storm after it hit land, is evidence against it being caused by climate change. It's too early to tell. If there's a dozen more of these or some high number, and they're very disproportionately powerful due to warming from the sea, then you've got something. But until that happened, folks, you don't have anything, and it's important to remember that. Now, next week on Cal's Corner, we're going to talk about Hillary Clinton and her new book, where she blames everybody except the Pleiadians for her loss to Donald Trump in the White House. My next book exposes Hillary Clinton. It's called What Didn't Happen, Why Hillary Lost. It is a play on the title of her current book, What Happened. And notice that Hillary's book is What Happened, not What Happened ? The fact is, she lost the election because she was the worst candidate that could have represented the Democratic Party. And I expose her in the upcoming book, which should be out by then, and we'll take her book to task and apart piece by piece. My name is Kal Korff. Thanks for joining me here on Cal's Corner, and we'll be back next week.